Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. I'm very happy to host a panel of experts today, Preston Dennett, Ryan Burns, and Eric Wood. But let me introduce you to the panel before we get started. Preston Dennett began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and co-workers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. Preston is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, also known as MUFON. He is also a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 30 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. Several of his books have been Amazon UFO bestsellers. Preston also co-hosts a popular radio show with Dolly Safran called The Late Gate. Ryan Patrick Burns is the creator of the popular podcast Hero Paranormal, and he has done extensive research on the Uintah Basin and the mysterious Skinwalker Ranch. Ryan moved to the desolate and remote basin to investigate the ranch full-time, and he now owns property overlooking the ranch and continues his research. Ryan has also written about his experiences investigating Skinwalker. Eric Wood hosts the Paranormal Highway and explores the mysteries of the unknown. Eric investigates and uncovers evidence about Bigfoot, UFOs, and other paranormal phenomena, as well as the Mandela effect. Eric is no stranger to many amazing experiences into the mysterious world of the paranormal. All of the links are below in the description box, and today we're going to discuss the topic of whether space aliens are a real thing or not. There has been so much media attention as of late, leading many people to think the whole thing is just a psyop, not real and fake, and the formal disclosure has left us with far more questions than answers. Now, Preston Dennett has something come up last minute that he couldn't avoid, so he will probably be joining us during the show. But for now, I'm very excited to talk to Ryan and Eric. Both have extensive information. I would definitely classify you both as experts in your field. And so I wanted to also say that some of you are familiar that I have had some extraterrestrial and off-world experiences, but my experiences are clearly transdimensional. I've never had a spaceship come and pick me up. I've never had gray aliens talk to me or communicate with me. I've never had that. So I'm not saying that it's not real. I'm just saying that my experiences are very, very different. And I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So as I said earlier, before we came on camera, I'm concerned because for a couple of reasons. One reason is, I don't personally, that's just my opinion. I don't trust anything the government says is real or not real. They've lost all their credibility with me. There's a lot of people who have a lot of experiences, but I got to be honest with you. A lot of the secret space program experiences that I've heard about, just basically, it's like watching SG-1. It's like it's all just taken right from popular shows. A lot of people's experiences and information about the Greys, also season 5 and season 6 of SG-1, exactly, almost word for word. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen or it isn't real. I just haven't seen a lot of evidence myself. And then recently we've had, the congressional meetings and the information that's come from that, David Grush, etc. So basically, I want to believe that it's real. The other thing I also want to mention is there's a lot of information and proof about UAPs, but that doesn't mean that they're off-world, that there's space aliens on them, or that they include space aliens. And Eric, I recently saw one of your shows where you had a guy come on who claims to be someone who recovers the bodies, and that they're not actually extraterrestrials the way we've considered them either. So Eric, how about if we start with you, and why don't you tell the viewers and Ryan and I a little bit more about that recent show that you did?
Okay. I know which one you're talking about. It was one I did like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
How that got hooked up was, I was in the military. My family's military, brother's military. I have a lot of family that are still in the military. So apparently, a guy wanted to say something about it, and my cousin told him, "Hey, I know a person that does a YouTube channel who's not part of the Jeremy Corbell team and all that. And if you want to say something, you go on his channel." So it was like spare of the moment. I mean, I was just sitting there. I didn't even have a show planned that day. I was just kicking back. I got a phone call, say, hey, cuz, I got somebody you might want to be interested in and listen to. I'm like, really? Because I'm not huge on the David Grush stuff. I'm not huge on the so-called whistleblower names. I'm like, all right, I'll listen to him. And then you're right. He talked about like bodies, but they're not the type of bodies that we think of, like you're saying, biological and all that. So, I can't sit here and tell you if the guy was real or not, because every time I ask him, I mean, is there any kind of picture proof, paper proof? Like everybody else, nobody has that. It's always like David Grush. Nothing against the guy. I'm not calling David Grush a liar. I'm not. But he says, I was told. It's that thing again. Now, he could have been told. Being in the military, shoot, you can have no offense, you can have a janitor come up to you and say, hey, I saw an alien when I was cleaning out the garbage can. Technically, that's not a lie, right? I mean, you heard that. But David Grush is, he's part of the Jeremy Corbell team, and which I don't know a lot of people know this. Jeremy Corbell is like he's like a sports agent. People don't know this, where he'll take you on like you're a client. Where whatever money he makes, people don't know this, that Jeremy Corbell gets like 23% of it. Because he's like the agent. He's the one who's going to get him on TV, get in front of panels. So I don't believe in stuff like that. But again, I kept asking him when he was on my channel. He calls out M13, and yes, he was disguising his voice. So he sounded like he was from the UK, Australian. I mean, it was like all over the place. But according to him, if they find out, like anybody else says, that if he's, if they know it's him, he can lose everything. And that's another thing about these so-called whistleblowers on UFOs and stuff. It's where I'm iffy. I'm not saying none of them are true, but I'm just iffy because anybody who's been in the military know that if you leak anything out that you're not supposed to, you can lose everything. Your pension, especially your money, your retirement. Would they do that? Would they do that to Jimmy Corbell? So I always question that. And again, every time I ask, what proof do you have? Can you send me something? And they always can. Now, apparently, my cousin called me back and said, hey, Eric, he said he will come back to your show in a couple weeks. I go, yeah, okay. I go, if I'm going to have him back on the show, he's got to give me something. I'm not a show and tell, If I'm going to back somebody on my channel and I want people to start believing the story, you got to give me something to show people.
Yeah.
But the biological part was interesting, Are there interdimensional? That comes out a lot lately, that these things are interdimensional. I mean, they could be. We don't know correctly. We don't know 100%. This is why we're all doing this, right? We're all talking to each other, studying each other. And I'm really interested on your other guests, everything you said about the books and all that. I want to hear his opinion about that last UFO panel that seemed like everybody in the UFO community fell in love with.
Hi, Preston. I'm so glad you could make it. So we just started, and I'll just sort of catch you up if that's okay. So the reason for this panel is because a lot of people are starting to believe that the whole extraterrestrial thing is hogwash and a big giant psyop. But there are other things too. Like, for instance, there's tons and tons of evidence of UAPs, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily have aliens on board, or that they're even, from other worlds. They could be domestic, they could be military, or they could be, created right here on Earth for different reasons. We don't know. And although I'm a believer and an experiencer, my experiences are very much, transdimensional, a little bit different. So I've never been physically picked up or anything like that. So I can't really speak to the different phenomena that we are hearing about here on Earth. And then we've had the hearings lately with David Grush, and so the whole thing is just getting sort of boiling over, and a lot of different talk show hosts that I've known who have been absolute believers are now going, no, it's not real, none of it's real, none of it's true. So Ryan, he's done a lot of investigation on Skinwalker, and that includes everything, everything from Bigfoot to what we would call flying saucers. Eric Wood has done a lot of research on a lot of interesting research on his show. Actually does 3 shows a week, quite a lot of information. We had a gentleman on, that's what we were talking about when you came in, who claimed to be on a team that recovers the bodies, which it turns out, although they're organic, they're not actually life forms. And then, of course, there's you, Preston, with you just have such a wealth of information. You've interviewed, I don't know, do you want to start by telling us how many people you've interviewed who've had experiences and why you believe them? Like, for instance, the fact that these people don't even know each other, and they're saying basically the same thing. So do you want to speak a little bit to that, Preston?
Yeah, I mean, I came into this field as a skeptic, a complete non-believer, until I found out that there were people who I knew were not lying, because they were my family. These were friends and loved ones and co-workers. We're having very dramatic encounters with UFOs, but certainly ghosts and other stuff as well, as I found out. So I started out researching UFOs, but really branched out into the paranormal because I think it is connected to a degree. And over the years, gosh, this was back in 1986 when I started. So it's well over 35 years now that I've been doing this. I've interviewed several hundred people. I mean, it's closer to 1,000, but in terms of really digging into a case, I'm going to say it's closer to several hundred. And cases of all kinds. I mean, certainly simple sightings, but I'm most interested in cases of more extensive contact, where people have had face-to-face contact with what they believe is an extraterrestrial or a humanoid of some kind. Landings, especially on-board experiences, those have the most data. I think those are the ones which you can't say this is a light in the sky that you misperceived. I mean, you are inside the phenomena, if you want to call it that. And eventually did start having my own experiences, because it's one thing to interview somebody and read a book and talk about this. That's just a belief ultimately, because you don't know, but you haven't experienced it. So I have experienced it myself. I know it's a real phenomenon, and you can call it what you want or interpret it as what you want. But this is my assessment based on the totality of the evidence that we are dealing with extraterrestrials, classic extraterrestrials, biological beings like us, very much like us, from other planets. And that is still the prevailing opinion, theory among those who are having direct contact. And when I say the evidence, it's not just eyewitness testimony, of course. There's a lot of it, certainly enough to convict anyone in a court of law. because these are multiple eyewitness testimonies backed up by, affidavits and lie detector tests and very credible witnesses. But there are, of course, landing trace cases, and there's thousands of those, literally thousands, which are not explainable as, campfire or anything. I mean, the ground is heated to thousands of degrees, glassified sand that can measure the weight of these objects at several thousand pounds due to the depth in the soil, the way the grass is swirled, or radiation readings. The landing trace evidence is very hard to explain as anything other than some sort of vehicle with an advanced propulsion system landed there. And it goes so far beyond that in terms of electromagnetic effects and animal reactions. Done a lot of research into the medical effects from witnesses, primarily healings, which haven't gotten a lot of attention. The evidence for them is outstanding, with doctors' reports before and after showing cancer being cured, or Chagas disease, or diphtheria, or, you name it, diabetes, cysts, tumors, injuries of all kinds. That's an outstanding form of evidence. Certainly, a lot of the cases I've researched involve implants. Now, we've all heard of Dr. Roger Lear, who's removed implants. And this is kind of smoking gun evidence. People are not in their rooms where they're supposed to be when they're reported being taken on board. This is not a psychological experience. Where are these people? If this is an interdimensional thing, where are these people when they are reported being taken on board? They're in a craft. This is all circumstantial evidence, I will say. But I'm glad you mentioned the crash retrievals, because if that's true, and I think it is, all bets are off. Problem with crash retrievals, as I think Eric was making a good point of, is that is purely anecdotal. We don't have access to these craft, these bodies, not in the public arena. And that's really unfortunate, because that's absolutely conclusive, hands down, word done evidence that this is extraterrestrial. But it irks me, if I may just finish up here, when there are major leading researchers who are lumping all these various paranormal phenomena into one thing and saying, well, we don't know it's ETs, ET and Bigfoot and ghosts and near-death experiences, and all of these could be one thing. Where's your evidence for that? When you are calling this a phenomena that comes down and wears different masks and masquerades, where's your evidence for that? What is the mechanism? Whereas the ET theory is very logical, very simple, almost inescapable, because who are we? We're certainly not someone else's mental projection. We know we exist. And it's very hard for me to escape the extraterrestrial explanation, because it's so logical, so plausible, inescapable that there are other beings out there, and we're seeing them. So that's kind of where I stand at this point. And I think that's not my belief so much as what the evidence is showing us. There, that's it in a giant nutshell.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear your perspective, because, I think the thing that's hanging up a lot of the UFO and extraterrestrial community is people want proof. Well, I can't explain why some of us have these amazing experiences and some of us don't. Like take me, for instance. I'm nobody special, believe me. I'm just as flawed as everybody else. It's not like I'm somehow deserving. Like, I have no idea why I've had the experiences I've had. I'm certainly grateful for them. They've changed my life, made me a better person, which, in turn helps, I think, make the world a better place. Not that I'm perfect, but, I want to believe. I want to believe, because, to be honest with you, otherwise it's damn depressing when you look at what's going on in the world and you think this is all there is, and as I get older, my God, I'm going to be dead before I know it. Long forgotten, I like to think that there's more to this. So I'm wondering, Ryan, do you want to weigh in on this whole matter? And I think your insights would be a great segue from what Preston has told us.
I think that Preston said it very well, and that is that there is more evidence than any one person can handle. And I think the issue becomes semantics. You know, you go back as far as possible in human history, and thank goodness they wrote a lot of these things in stone, you know, with the Sumerians. And, you know, what do we end up with? We end up with these creators from another world, be that dimensional or not, a different space. And it's not, I don't think it's anything new. It's how we assess and analyze it. Of course, now we have this huge tool that we believe is new to us, which is science. And the Fermi paradox, you know, if you don't see it, then it doesn't exist. But I argue that, you go back throughout human history, and many intelligent cultures and civilizations, including the Greeks, they just worshipped many gods, whether that be with a big G or a small g or a whole hierarchy of them. They couldn't see them all the time, yet they believed that these entities could interfere in humans' interactions here in our reality. And for some reason, I think human beings are under the assumption that there is like some Star Trek Prime Directive or this guiding principle that prohibits interference with the natural development of other life forms, and that these entities would strongly adhere to that when it's really a human creation. And I'm really glad that Eric mentioned, you know, Jeremy Corbell, because there's so much evidence, whether it comes out of the Corbell camp or any others. And I'm glad he mentioned it, because we have this Mosul orb, which has been literally gummed up in the system there at Langley, them going over this footage. I think it's 4 seconds of film is all, but there's this steel ball that nobody can attribute to anything, and it's following a spy plane and never loses altitude and acts as if it is some sort of exotic technology. And, you know, what does that show us? I think it just shows us that there's something more here than just us, which we've always sort of known. And, you know, science is, interestingly enough, I think, coming full circle, where it's actually reinforcing spirituality and religion at this point, because, as you know, there's, you know, the double slit experiment, which, how do these electrons know they're being observed? You know, this issue that the quantum mechanics of our dimension are starting to kind of get phrase at the end of the string. And I'm glad that Preston mentioned Roger Lear, because I've had some interesting direct communication when he was alive with him over some things that could not be explained that had to do with me. So like you said, Karen, when these things happen to yourself, and as Preston said, when they happen to you, when you see things that don't fit within our paradigm, we have to believe. However, the hard part is vocalizing that. And I think once you believe, you know, you don't have to convince everybody of it. It's just a matter of them wrapping their own heads around it at their own rate of speed.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Donald Hoffman, but I've watched a few of his TED Talks and his information. And basically what he's pioneering is what's outside of reality. So, you know, when we're born, we're basically socialized, and we develop a schema, which is sort of like a framework that we hang all of our beliefs on. It's very structured. I also believe that this is what traps us into the matrix or into the construct.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on out there beyond that we don't even have language for concepts. So now, you know, the whole checking out reality, then there's also those that do so through psychedelics. Eric, do you want to? Yeah.
I want to bring up what your last guest talked about science, because I love that take about science, because that is the biggest problem with most people when they always say, I hate it to this day. Well, science can't prove that. Well, science can't prove that as of today, but science change every day. Science could be different tomorrow, in an hour, 10 years. Science evolves. We could only use science to the technology we have now. If you think about life from another planet, which I believe there is life on another planet, and they're able to travel here, that means we're here, they're here. Their science is going to be a lot greater than ours. We can't spot their science yet. You know, science is good, but it has to be involved like everybody else. There's different theories every year about something, right? A new theory, another theory, because science improves when technology improves. So I always hate that argument from people that, well, science doesn't prove that. Well, not today, but tomorrow it might.
Yep. Good points. You look at the medical industry, what they were doing 50 years ago, we look at that and we go, oh my God, how barbaric, right? 50 years from now, we'll be looking back at what they're doing today, cutting edge. And
It'll be like Star Trek with the toy. You're fixed. It will one day. It will.
Yeah. So, I agree. The other thing too is, and maybe I'm just getting jaded in my old age, but I think that a lot of science has actually been weaponized, has been held back. I don't think we're really seeing what is possible. And that leads us into, let's do a bit of a go round on this whole UFO versus UAP thing. Like, for instance, there is tons of evidence. We've all seen it. We've all got friends that have seen it. We've all, tons of evidence that there is unidentified aerial phenomena. But that in some ways seems to be almost a separate issue to the whole, are space aliens real? Because there's no evidence that there's anybody on board those. They could be domestic technologies. They might be UFOs. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And people have certainly seen so many. I mean, there's just so much evidence. People that say, I don't believe in UAPs until I, have an experience with one. How can you deny all the evidence? There's so much. But I think that sort of muddies the water towards the whole, are space aliens real? So I'm wondering, Preston, do you want to speak to that issue?
Sure. And I'm glad, Ryan, that you brought up semantics because this field is suffering from semantic disaster, calling UFOs UFOs, which could be anything, when it's really come to mean an extraterrestrial craft. And yeah, science. I'm a big believer in science. I think it's really allowed us to progress in our knowledge quite a bit. But people have become very fuzzy in their thinking because we do have the evidence. We do have enough evidence to be absolutely conclusive that this is a real phenomenon. We have enough photographic evidence that's outstanding, undeniable. I would point to the Kumburgaz Turkey footage of 2007, 8, and 9, which the Turkish government has not been able to debunk. No one's been able to effectively debunk this footage, which clearly shows a craft with little ETs in it. What is that? There's so much footage, the Rex Heflin footage, the Trinidad photographs. It goes on and on. The Great Falls, Montana. There's so much photographic evidence alone. It always irks me when people say that there is no evidence, because there is. And I just went on my rant last time I spoke about all the evidence, because I just cannot wrap my head around why people are so resistant to.
They don't care.
You have to
put evidence right in front of their
clearly.
face. They don't care.
When you talk to a skeptic, it's so funny because they haven't examined the evidence and they refuse to examine the evidence. This is one of the things I always see with skeptics. They won't even look at it, will not examine the evidence. I've got people who sent me x-rays of implants that are diagnosed as a foreign body. These are not implants that have been removed and studied, but they're certainly not natural. And they can relate it directly to a UFO experience. Science has a tendency to become a little bit of a closed system because it builds up a paradigm and a hypothesis that if any evidence counters against it, it's rejected. And we see this with, look what's that book? Forbidden Archaeology by Michael Cremo really showed how a lot of evidence, anthropological evidence, was being tossed out because it didn't fit what people believed to be true. And science and scientists are just as flawed as anyone else. We all have the tendency to look at things through our own belief system and not be objective about things. It's very hard for people to just step away from their own belief system and look at the evidence objectively. And I think if you do, hands down, I mean, you can debunk one case or another, but the fact is we're approaching a database close to 1 million documented cases. When people from all over the world who don't know each other are reporting very similar, if not exactly the same details, it's undeniable. I mean, it really is. You cannot explain it any other way.
I agree. You know, the other thing too is it wasn't that long ago in history where the seen and the unseen, they weren't divided. And then somebody had the great idea that they would divide the unseen and give that to the church, and they would give only the seen to the scientific community, and it got separated. And maybe there is no separation between the seen and the unseen. I mean, I know a lot of my experiences are very fantastical, but it doesn't mean they're not real. And then there's the whole idea of our perceptual arena. And who's to judge and say that someone else's perceptions are not real? Ryan, do you want to take it away from here?
Yeah, these are such good points, guys, because you know what Eric pointed out, science is changing. This is a moving target. These are no hills to die on, you know. These are just stepping stones towards new frontiers. And when I was a kid, dinosaurs didn't have feathers. And guess what? The toddlers I have toys where the dinosaurs have feathers on them. So this is changing. And, you know, the anomalous aspect, what Preston said, this verbiage, you know, UFO, UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. I mean, it's in the word. You know, an anomaly is something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected. And we have to remember that, as you said, Karen, the seen and the unseen, this is a big deal because what we're talking about isn't black and white. We're literally talking about grays. And I think a lot of the literature, these are liminal, you know, point at this. These are liminal spaces. And it's very likely that the entities within them are also liminal.
Yep. Before you came on, Preston, I was talking about I recently had some poor health, and I ended up binge watching some of the SG-1 series, which is the Stargate series. And on it, I was quite surprised in season 5 and season 6 that, yeah, I did watch that much. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I just took my mind off my other troubles, so I did it. And, you know, a lot of people are talking about the secret space program, and it's just right out of SG-1. A lot of people are talking about their experiences with the Greys and the genetics and how they're clones and how they need, you know, people to help them replenish their genetic stock and all of that right out of SG-1. But then that doesn't mean that people aren't telling the truth, because I think a lot of science fiction could be loosely based on people's experiences. And even if it's not, when stuff comes out of your imagination, how do we know that isn't real too? Like, where do we get this stuff from? Like, where do we get this stuff from? If it isn't, I'm of the opinion that through our pineal gland, our imagination is an interdimensional device that actually helps us to bring in information and give information that, you know, shamans have used that, the portal of the imagination for thousands of years. And, you know, the fact that humans are still around proves that we must have been doing something right when we were in what we might consider a primitive state, which actually might be the opposite. We might now be in a really primitive state. Like, it's really hard to nail any of this down. It's like nailing Jello to a tree. It's very, I don't know. I just think that we've been, our education system has not served us well as far as actually allowing us to expand the limits of our intelligence, of our imagination, of possible experiences. I know I'm really out there, guys, but this is just based on my experience. I am not your nuts and bolts kind of girl. I'm sorry. And
he imagined the helicopter before it was invented. Jules Verne imagined the submarine. Arthur C. Clarke imagined geosynchronous satellites before they were invented. So imagination comes before. It's what forms our, how we invent things. Mendeleev, he had a dream which showed him the periodic table.
Yep.
Eric, what were you going to say?
First of all, Karen, never be ashamed of binging the show. All right, I just binged a whole show called Suits. All right, that's not even my type of show, but I got hooked on it. So I don't make any apologies. I watch every single season in 1 week. Tells you about my life. But I love what everybody's saying here. UFOs, UAPs. I think I can't remember which one mentioned where people say they don't exist. UAPs, UFOs, and people see UFOs, UAPs every single day. If you don't recognize what it is, that's what a UFO is. Doesn't mean exactly there's an alien on there. It means you don't identify it. That could be any object in the air. And I think even if you have all these evidence, like people are saying on your panel, that people still won't even accept that. I know I sound a little bit of a hypocrite because when I had that guy on my channel, I was asking him for evidence. But I was like more for for myself, because I hate to have somebody on my channel pushing this without me backing him 100%. So, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm sorry. UFOs, aliens, they're very real. I think part of the problem is everybody in most communities, like the paranormal Bigfoot communities, always says you can't trust the government, right? A majority. But a lot of people in the UFO community says that too, but they expect these panels to give them all the answers. Mm-hmm. And then I don't understand that. They're not going to give you the answers. When you had that guy from Arrow, I don't know his name, when he was speaking about the videos and all that, and he said that they're still not given all the information. They're still not given some of the classified information. So why are we spending all this money in the so-called breakthrough group called Arrow? Them themselves even said they can't get their hands on all the information. It's almost like we're living in a Mickey Mouse club, right? I mean, it's like a Mickey Mouse world. Like, hey, I don't mind paying taxpayers' money. I'm not saying I want to spend your money, but what I mean is I don't mind spending money if I know that the group is going to be able to have access to it all. Otherwise, what are we doing? Is this just another clown show? What did NASA say the other day? No, we are finally going to start exploring these UFOs. Like, what have you been doing for the last 40, 60 years? You got all the satellites. You got everything in space. You're telling me that all this time you were never exploring, but all suddenly now you are? But again, not even NASA is allowed to have all the government information. So what are we doing? I even myself, I don't get it.
Yeah, Preston, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I agree exactly with what everyone is saying here on the panel. I'm just frustrated that this subject seems so hard to move forward. And hearing, the congressional hearings, every single one of them going back to about 3 years ago, which is, yes, unprecedented because we've had no movement since the hearing in the 60s or 70s, was it? Following the dissolution of Project Blue Book. There's been no movement. And then we had Moultrie and Daly, the head guys of the Defense Department, come on and answer questions from congressional members. And they lied. They flat out lied. They were asked, have we ever shot at these craft? They said no. Well, that's demonstrably untrue. We can prove that that's not true. Look at Frank Ficino's book shoot them down. That was the policy. Look at
Mm-hmm.
the Battle of LA, 1941, I think it was 42, where we shot some 1,500 rounds at an object hovering over Culver City for 2 hours. And there's photographs, there's documentation of this. Yes, we've shot at them. Bailey and Moultrie were asked about the Montana incident at that Air Force base in Montana, where nuclear missiles were shut down by a UFO, viewed by many people. I interviewed one of the participants to that encounter at Malmstrom. That's the name, Malmstrom Air Force Base. And Moultrie and Daly said, we have no reporting on that. That's laughable. That's absolutely disingenuous. Of course they know. They're the heads of the Defense Department. And it went on and on. They just lied and showed us this tiny little dot, like, which they had to took 10 minutes for them to show us a stop frame of this little dot. Like, this is some footage we have. It's like, shut up. I know you have better footage than that. That is ridiculous. We know you have gun camera footage. We know a UFO landed at Edwards Air Force Base because astronaut Gordon Cooper was there when it happened and saw the footage. So it was just filled with lies, and that was the first one. And it's been going on and on and on. This is not disclosure.
You'll never see the footage. You'll never see that picture.
Yeah, I'll show us, until, to me, the end game of disclosure is show us the Roswell craft. It's not a mogul balloon. That's absurd. Show us the craft and the bodies. We know you've got them. We have how many whistleblower reports now? It's approaching 1,000 at least, but it's several hundred. And some of these guys do have really good credentials. Colonel Corso, no one's ever been able to knock him down. He's got a sterling resume. And he said flat out he saw this stuff. But yeah, that's one of the cutting edges, I think, of this field is disclosure or the push towards it. But we're not seeing it. The ETs have done it. They've provided enough evidence. Our governments have, alt governments have it, but I don't think they will ever be truthful, not voluntarily.
Nope.
Hi guys, break time for a short message. YouTube will not monetize me, so if you enjoy my content and want to support my efforts, help me to cover my expenses by visiting my shop to buy yourself a beautiful orgone generator. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand, and they are ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. They are only available through my website, www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. Many people are finding comfort with Zendome's orgone generators, commonly called Orgonite. They are a simple compound which balance ambient energy by converting negative energy and EMF into positive healing energy, with many easily confirmed health benefits. They are a simple compound with alchemic and energetic properties. These devices function as self-driven, continuously operating, highly efficient, negative to positive energy transmutation factories. They help diminish the harmful effects of electromagnetic frequency radiation by attracting and converting negative energies, retuning them into new and more healthful sound and light wave patterns. And they help to purify the atmosphere and accelerate plant growth. They also help stimulate positive mood and are a natural remedy for poor sleep patterns. When Orgonite is within range of any corded or wireless electronic device, it will efficiently and continuously transform that energy into orgone as it is being transmitted. This essentially creates orgone energy transmitters out of any and all emitters of harmful negative energy. You can use these devices for focusing the mind, healing, meditation, and for spiritual growth. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand of orgone generators, and they are only available through my website. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out my website to see my latest selection at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. healthcoach.com. Check them out today. Now, let's get back to the show.
Nope.
I think it even goes beyond that. There's a documentary that a lot of people refer to called Mirage Men. And I don't know if you've seen it. It's poorly done. And they don't say that it's all misinformation, but they lead. If you're not a critical thinker and you watch that show and you learn about Richard Doherty and the different ways that when people start to notice things that maybe are top secret, they go and press a misinformation program about extraterrestrials. But that doesn't mean that you throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. It just means that there has been definitely some misinformation, some people spreading misinformation. And for some reason, the government really doesn't want us to be aware of the greater reality. Now, I think it has to do with money. I think it all has to do with power and money, because, if we had free energy, if we realize that we have more in common than what we have different, maybe we wouldn't want to go to war anymore. And the, military industrial complex, just cha-ching, needs all this glut of money, all the money laundering that's going on through war. Don't get me started on war. It just horrifies me that people are just so sucked into thinking this is a good thing and willing to sacrifice their children. I don't know. I'm horrified, but that's just me, and that's just my opinion. But so I think the powers that be have financial and power reasons for keeping the secret. But anybody who has any kind of critical thinking skills should be able to see through that and should be able to see the evidence. And like you said, Preston, if someone is charged with murder and you have 2 or 3 eyewitness accounts, even though there isn't physical proof like video camera of what footage of what happened, that's taken as serious evidence. Yep. And so, why isn't this happening with the whole extraterrestrial phenomenon? The other thing I wanted to say, I want to move a little bit into ETs themselves. Now, a lot of people go, well, if extraterrestrials are here, how come we're not seeing them walk down the street? How come, we're not seeing them introduced as part of cabinets and this and that? And first of all, I don't think they're going to want to get themselves dirty by getting involved in all the goings on of the higher levels of Earth, number one. But number two is these beings, assuming they're from other planets, they have a unique physiology. And from the evidence that we've seen, there's some kind of a field around these craft that allow them to move at speeds and change directions that our bodies would just get smashed to bits, splattered everywhere. Like, you know what I mean? And so maybe there's also some kind of a field that allows them to keep the gravity they need, their equivalent of the Schumann resonance, all the things they need to stay healthy. And maybe that's a good reason why they're not walking down the street. The other thing too is, I'm telling you, I don't know if it's just propaganda or what, but the streets are not that safe to be walking down the street. I mean, seriously, I think humans got a lot of growing up to do. Anyway, I've just voiced a bunch of concepts.
No, Karen, let me jump on that one.
Please feel free to jump in. Yeah.
I want to jump in because listen, if they're able to get here, these things are smarter than us. They have studied us. We, as people on this world, can't even be friends with each other. Every time you turn on the news, there's a war. People hating your neighbors for your color, your skin, blood. I mean, if they show themselves to us, I hate to say it, it's going to be shoot first, ask questions later. And you don't think they know that? Especially that's why they're more in the country versus the city, because they get less likely to be seen. They're not going to walk the streets. They're not going to talk to us because we're not ready for that. I'm talking about the people in power. They're not ready for that. Like you're saying with the corporations, they're all corrupted. They don't want people to stop buying their products and start looking into aliens and they know they're real, because they know that the economies of this world can technically collapse because people will stop going to work, stop making money, stop paying taxes. You know what I mean? There are people that would stop if they know aliens did exist on this planet. So they're not going to show themselves because they know that people are evil. I hate to say that. I'm not talking about us, but most people, especially with money and power, they're just evil. There's no way they're going to show themselves yet. We're not ready for that yet.
Oh, I
That's the
agree.
ET threat, I think. The ET threat is not to all humanity. I think their mission here, their agenda is quite clear in terms of it being about healing and teaching and warning us
Studying
and
us,
this sort
yeah.
of thing. Whereas the ET threat, which our governments or all governments are clearly pushing, it's to them. It's to their power structure. It's to their enslavement over all humanity. It's to their money. So I think, yeah, that's the real problem. People are calling ETs all kinds of heinous things and names and imposing our own evil onto them. We're the ones who commit evil acts to each other. We're the ones who have decimated whole populations.
We
You know,
have
the
to involve.
doing that.
We have to involve.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's what the ETs are trying to do. If you look at the contactees, that's their mission. Generally speaking, people who are contactees have a real strong psychic ability. And I think there's a reason for that. Because if we were all telepathic, just think how quickly corruption would fade away.
Yes.
Like people couldn't lie to us. We would no longer allow ourselves to be enslaved by these 1%ers or power elite or cabal, call them what you want. But I agree with you. They do not have our best interests in mind. I don't trust them. I think they're up to no good.
Yep.
And we're going to all pay the price for that.
I can't agree more. I think that misinformation and the these power elite don't want us to know. And it is literally as if misinformation's big business. And before we came on, Karen, I was telling you about my friend who was a big fan of yours. And he has a family member, as I told you, I mentioned, who works for Space Force. And guess what? Everybody I know and talk to loves Space Force. Nobody knows what they do. And it's one of these things, I think that we are all inherently good when we're born. I was just looking at a study that showed that when a child is born, we're all basically creative geniuses. But the educational system changes that. I think 98% of preschoolers are considered creative geniuses, and by grade school, it's only 30%. And it just keeps going down as we quote unquote grow. I argue that it's really not growing. They're pruning us. They are misinforming us. They're teaching us to mimic, do basically copy, memorize. Don't come up with anything yourself. And, with David Grush, I think this is so important because with Arrow and NASA, all these groups, as Eric pointed out, while Arrow is spending all this money, we come to find out that David Grush has a Title 50 security clearance, and Arrow and NASA only have Title 10. So of course they have no idea what he's talking about.
Exactly.
None. And
you can't make it up.
it's just crazy. And what? Anyway, I could go on and on. Yeah.
Well, I looked at Arrow. So yeah, when looking at Arrow, it's a mouthful. What is it? The all-domain anomaly reconnaissance. I don't even know what it quite stands for, something like that. But they have 6 goals. And I was looking at them, and boy, did it raise my eyebrows. Because the first 3, I think, are legit in terms of it being to, analyze UFOs, determine capabilities, but this sort of thing. Where is it? Where are they appearing in all of this? But their last 3 goals really kind of curled my toes, because one was, let's see if I can get this right, to mitigate UAPs. Mitigate? Really? Okay. Good luck with that. Another was to govern UAP activity. Well, hold on a second. You can't even govern your own countries.
Yep.
How are you going to govern ETs? And the third, or the last, the 6th, was to obtain the technology. And we have such a long history of abusing technology. This is why
Yes.
ETs, that talking about disinformation, misinformation. I looked into that so-called Grenada Treaty, where our governments supposedly exchanged technology with ETs to allow, quote, abductions. That, I think, is flat out dangerous disinformation. ETs would never in a million years hand over technology to our governments, who are incredibly abusive to us and use technology for nefarious purposes. It's ridiculous. And this is what the contactees have been told. And I'm gonna
it's a rough neighborhood here. Yeah. This is a rough neighborhood. I agree. I think, 8 months ago, we had 4 quote unquote UFOs shot down in 9 days. And then at the same time, you have this scenario with Grush and him not being allowed in this, I guess it's called the X program. We all thought that the X Files were just make believe. No, they're not. And apparently, this is why disinformation and misinformation is such big business. It reminds me of that saying, what's the greatest trick the devil ever pulled? Convincing you he doesn't exist. And I think that's what they're doing, is convincing us these don't exist. End of story, so they can deal with it.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is, why would an extraterrestrial person want to come to Earth and end up in a lab and being experimented on, and God knows what? People that are, they used to have a lot of animal rights activists because of the incredible amount of cruelty that the pharmaceutical industry has perpetuated on these innocent animals, and nobody seems to be talking about that anymore either. Nope. And another thing I want to say, why I don't trust the government, since they print money off as they want it, why the hell are they charging people taxes? Why don't they just go print more? Like, I know there's economic reasons, but it's just, I don't trust them at all. I don't trust anything they say. So, so I've watched a few of those hearings, and then the most recent one I saw, I guess, was the NASA one, and I just shook my head. I was so disgusted. I'm not wasting my precious time on watching any more of that crap. I'd rather spend my time.
Say we need more evidence to determine what this is.
What a bunch of idiots.
This has been studied for 80 years. Really, you need more evidence? Disingenuous. I don't, like you said, Karen, I don't trust them. They're lying.
Yeah.
It's a comedy show, Karen. You got to watch it. Get some popcorn and just kick back. Listen, that one panel that Tim Burchett was behind was the biggest, weakest government panel you ever seen in your life. Those people on that panel was a joke. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm not trying to be harsh, but when you watch any government panels, when they're going against corporations, I mean, they're calling them liars, they're digging in, you're a crook, you're this. On that panel, so David Grush, all right, can you tell us something about it? Oh, I can't tell you that. It's a secret. Oh, okay. And, like, nobody was pushing for information. Like, you're here, you have your opportunity to be the whistleblower you're supposed to be. I take the fifth. I can't say nothing. And they'll say, well, can you tell me after this conference? Yes, I can. They never did. I mean, it's all a joke. I call it the donkey show.
Most of that conference was them talking, not the witnesses.
Nobody was pushing the other person to say something. It was like, you can't say nothing? Okay, that's fine. I understand. That's not the government panel that I've seen before when they go against corporations. Why can't they go against these people like that? I thought they're whistleblowers, right? Then be the whistleblower.
Yeah, it was interesting when they said, well, some of us members of Congress have seen UFOs, but I'm not going to name names. Well, that's
exactly.
Not so transparent.
Then why are we here? If you can't say names, then why are we here today?
I'm glad you called it a donkey show, Eric, because it is a dog and pony show. And Tim Burchett, honestly, like, I saw an interview where him and another guy were kind of stopped in the hallway very dramatically and asked questions. Mm-hmm. And they pointed out the Pentagon, if we ran our finances as individuals, we would be, the way the Pentagon does, we would be locked up. The Pentagon has 60% of their assets are unaccounted for. They don't know where they are. And, it's all black budget. And then at the same time, we're wondering, like, why aren't they giving us straight answers? I think it's really corrupt. And the reality is they don't want us to know. This has always been, top secret clearances aside, this is all, those fly out the window, because we've had examples with like Admiral Wilson talking to Eric Davis in a parking lot in Las Vegas, saying, why don't my clearance is off the chain. Why don't I know this information? And the answer is, well, because you don't need to know. And it seems as if, presidents, it doesn't matter how high you go up. There's a small advanced working group that knows what's going on, and they don't care who you are, because unless you have a need to know, you're never going to know.
You're never going to know.
Yeah, what gives you the need to know?
Yeah, who makes those decisions? So getting back to are space aliens real? I'm going to just vote and say absolutely. And I think that is why we're having the one-on-one contact. And then people like Preston and even Eric and Ryan on your shows, you're interviewing people, you're talking about it, you're disseminating that information out. But I think that it's a real direct contact. And the other thing I wanted to say is the beings that I have contact with, they taught me how to use telepathy. Now, I have no problem really receiving. For some reason, I seem to be a real easy for me to receive. But boy, I'm a mess when it comes to projecting, and I had to have quite a bit of training to do with that. I'm working on my manuscript, and I go into great detail on what the training was like. And actually, that training would be good for everyone, because I think we all have the ability to use telepathy, and it's a way more honest way to communicate. And from my sources, I'm not saying my sources are the, pinnacle of the truth or anything like that, but in my context, the telepathy is the universal language. It's a universal language. It includes images, symbols, feelings, emotions, and it's a real art form. But I think we're perfectly capable of practicing and bringing this. It's a skill, and you practice. That's how people learn how to play the piano.
We only use 8% of our brains. What if we learn how to access the other part of the brain? So it's all a possibility, because what is the other 88% of the brain? What does it do? So it's all a possibility.
Yep. And then we won't be tricked by the psychology they're using, to sell us a bunch of junk and, advertising, and oh my goodness, and we are affected to a certain degree until we become critical thinkers and we start to question everything. So I believe that the direct contact is the disclosure, and it's happening to more and more of us. And it's not easy to come out and tell everybody about your experiences. I'm not that popular getting invited to shows and stuff, because my reality and my experience is pretty fantastical. And then, you get the hardcore, I want nuts and bolts proof people, right? And I don't care if people
we can
think
blame
I'm
our
not.
governments for that. They've spent an enormous amount of time, money, and energy to make this subject look ridiculous and contactees as idiots. We call things paranormal, which are not paranormal. The laws of the universe are not being broken. We just don't understand it. Telepathy should be studied and funded. It's been proven in a laboratory setting on a number of times. And I am going to go flat out and say, yes, extraterrestrials are real. And those who don't think so haven't done their homework. I don't mean to be rude, but you need to study this evidence there without overlaying it with your own belief system. The evidence is there. Disclosure has happened. The ETs have done it. We need to stop looking to our lying governments for answers, because they're never going to tell the truth.
Nope.
Everything we know about ET contactees.
I love these guys. I love these guys.
Yeah. What's your thought, Ryan?
Preston nailed it on the head. And so did you with as far as we have as human beings, we have the potential to communicate and do things which far outweigh what we are told we can do. And it brings me back to that Fermi paradox, that discrepancy. I feel as if science has proven it to himself. It found the answer, it turned around, and it's going back through the maze again. The discrepancy between the lack of conclusive evidence and of advanced extraterrestrial life and the apparently high likelihood of its existence. And it's, because what does science say? It says, well, let's see, what's the possibility of there being life on a planet? Well, we are on one. There's life here. Okay, oops. Let's ignore that fact. And then you look up and you see all the rest. And it's just, as someone else put it with much more information that I could have, if someone from somewhere must have come here by now. And we're going all over the place and we're not asking permission. We're checking it out. We're sending drones. We're sending rovers. We're doing all these things that NASA purports we're doing. Yet their own ability to be open-minded is somewhere locked away in some deep underground military base, because they have absolutely zero open-mindedness when it comes to the possibility of anything other than a government directive taking place.
Mm-hmm. Eric, what are your thoughts? Are you going to weigh in? Do you believe in space aliens?
Oh, first of all, 100%. Because first of all, listen, mankind, we haven't even left our own solar system yet. All right. So you're gonna like he said, we're like the only planet in this whole galaxy that never ends. The only planet that has life. There's life out there. We just don't know what they look like. Maybe some people do when they come here. Because we haven't even left our solar system. We're barely sending drones to Mars right now. You know what I mean? Mars is the furthest we've been to. So we don't know what's out there. And listen, we have been visited. Now, we do got to be careful, because there are a lot of great stories out there of people being abducted. But we also know what hurts our community is the people who are lying about it too. We do gotta recognize that there are a lot of people that do make up stories because they just want to get to the top, whatever, Karen, when you're talking about like you don't get invited, I have mentioned on my show that I found out physically I am blacklisted in a lot of these bigger groups that they don't want me on there because I don't go along with everything, Listen, like the alien wars supposedly down Peru. Listen, I have people in the military. This is my opinion only. There is no war against aliens down there. They're smarter than that. They're not going to start a war with soldiers in some other country. They're smarter than that. But the problem is people in the community is going to push that because it's for popularity reasons. They want the popularity. They want the clicks. They want the views. So we also have to be very careful with that. Even though we all want the truth, but you also got to watch out who you're listening to, who you're watching. Because for me, I try to look at common sense. We know there's evidence out there, but we also know people aren't going to believe those evidence. Mm-hmm. You can show a picture right in front of your face. You can have a camera of an alien ship landing in your backyard. People are not going to believe it. And of course, and if there was, of course, the government would take it, call you a liar, and they'll destroy your life. How many people got destroyed alive? That's why I'm so intrigued with the Mary Island incident. That story intrigues me. That story intrigues me more than Roswell. That's why a lot of people think I'm crazy that I say that I know we're not getting to Roswell stuff, but the Roswell crash is part of that UFO ships that was over Mary Island, because that happened 2 months before Roswell. And then what I hate is when people not having an open mind, when I bring that up, they're like, no, Eric, that's a total different crap. Well, come on. We're being visited, but let's not pretend we're being visited by 5 different planets at the same time. I go, the Mary Island incident was 6 ships that had a malfunction. Why is that not a possibility that group that was also seen over Mount Rainier, I forgot the guy's name who saw them, and then 2 months later, then you got the Roswell. There is a connection, but even the UFO community don't want to connect that together. They're different clans. How do you know that? They could probably all be from the same clan. We just got to be open-minded. And I love your guests, your panels, because these guys are open-minded. I could tell by them that they're not going to jump on every story that pops out. They're going to listen, they're going to study, and they're going to come up with their own opinion, not based on what another person's opinion is. And that's what I hope that everybody learns from the show today is, at the end of the day, it's your own belief. We can show you all the evidence, all the proof, bring all the people we want, but at the end of the day, the proof is up to you and what you accept. And the only thing I say is, do not take your source just for one person. Listen to multiple people. Listen on how they tell you that source. Listen to similarities of the story. Start writing this stuff down, because it's all a puzzle. Because you don't want to take your source on just like two people that they could be lying. You want to listen to 5 or 6 and then come up with your own idea. And you're not wrong. Whatever you come up with is your opinion at the end of the day. Don't let anybody crash you down, kick you down if they think you're wrong or right. Because at the end of the day, we technically, honestly, we 100% don't know. You know what I mean? We don't truly know unless it happens to you. And that's another thing I hate, that it's not true until it happens to you. You know what I mean? Like when we had a Bigfoot encounter, that story, right? I told you that story. But we knew before that Bigfoot was a possibility, that it was real, because we was told by our family, passed down to us, But most people, they're not going to believe it unless it happens to them. And that's what's sad. They're not going to be open-minded. Well, it has happened to us. It's not real. People, it is real. Every day you hear stories. Not all. This only takes one photo out of 1 million photos to be real, right? It only takes one video, one shot to make something real. So you just got to be careful when you're researching. I talk too much. I apologize.
One of the big problems I think in this field is the misinformation,
yes,
the disinformation,
that is a huge
which
problem.
Is heavily funded. And if you just go on Facebook, these groups with all the CGI and the absolutely outrageous stories, or go to these UFO conventions, and there are people up there who are very popular, researchers and quote experiencers alike, who are telling absolutely outrageous stories that couldn't be true based on basic science. The misinformation, the disinformation in this field is horrendous.
And some of them wants to be the gatekeeper, where they want all the information to flow through them. And when it doesn't, them themselves will kick other stories down so they can stay on top.
Yep.
It's sad, but it's true.
And that overlaps with the UFO cults. And there's a lot of them out there, and a lot of people claiming to be speaker one and the only one who is disseminating the information from ET. And then there's also money tied into, and prestige all tied into that too. So, I'm always weary, or what's the right word? Weary, cautious.
Weary is good, but wary.
Wary, yeah, wary, wary and wary of anyone who claims to be the grand poobah for the extraterrestrials. And I'm not saying they're lying, not at all. I'm just saying that it makes me cautious. And anyone who is presenting themselves as something they're not. But anyway, listen, guys, we still have a few minutes left, but I'm wondering if we could go around through the panel. I want you guys to talk about what you offer. Talk about your podcasts, your broadcasts, your radio shows, your books, your journals. Tell everybody about what you offer, so people will come and check out your YouTube channels and check out your radio shows and start hopefully listening and learning from you, because you're a wealth, an absolute wealth of information. Like I said at the beginning, as far as I'm concerned, you're all experts. And, this is a great place, a great jumping off point for people to come and start learning more. So, Ryan, do you want to start off?
Sure. Thanks so much, Karen, and thanks for having me on. You can follow what I'm doing at, as you said, I have a smaller podcast. It's heroparanormal.com. You can also find Hero Paranormal on YouTube. It just stands for the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast. But I also have a ranch in the Uinta Basin of Utah that shares a fence line with a famous Bigelow Ranch of old. And that can be accessed at spacewolfresearch.com. And I've got a few books out there. You can purchase those at ryanpatrickburns.com. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and definitely check out what Eric and Preston have as well.
Eric.
My main source, of course, is YouTube. I do about 4 live shows a week: Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays, I take a break. And what I've been doing lately is, like, Monday will be UFO Monday, Tuesday will be Cryptid Tuesday, Thursday be Paranormal Thursday, and on Friday I have my brother, Dr. Wu, who's an archaeologist that actually worked at the Smithsonian Museum of Flight that's been around the world. He comes in on Friday, and we'll talk about any topics, even Mandela effects. It doesn't matter. We'll research any topic. And sometimes we'll just have a fun show. Yesterday, for example, we did a show on building a top 10 list of horror movies with the people from the chat. So, we like to have fun in a way. We're serious, but in a fun type of way, because we want to be that channel for people that it could get serious if you go into 100 UFO channels and it's so serious. Then you go on my UFO channel on Monday, we're a little bit more light. You know what I mean? Come in, we're talking serious, but we have fun. And we're just looking for the truth like anybody else, looking at all the evidence, looking at everything. And, I don't have a link up. Like tomorrow, we're going to be talking about where I live. There's a place called Devil's Hand. And some people say the Devil's Hand was developed from the Mary Island incident, that somehow, believe it or not, it's a story that's opened up a portal to hell. So we're going to do a show about that tomorrow. Like, are these stories from these small towns true? Are there truth to it? So we're just open-minded, and we like to have fun, and check it out. I even have I don't know if the other 2 guests know, I even have a cartoon series
That's right.
of about 2 YouTubers that's going on a journey with an alien and a Bigfoot. The idea is we bring all communities of aliens, Bigfoots, ghosts, everything into it. And it's an adventure of just going through everything. I don't want to sit here all day explain it, but I even have a cartoon series that's for fun and all that. And I got a new one coming out in 2 weeks that's going to be premiering. It's part 11 from the last one. Anybody saw the last one was we go into the Mandela Effect world multiverse. So but the cartoon is actually built on theories, the lost city of Atlantis, the pyramids, everything. So these cartoons are just cartoons. They're actually based on the mythology and folklore stories that are out there. I just put it together as a fun way, and hopefully to get people into it, to start thinking about it.
Yeah. Now the links are going to be below, but Eric, for those that are listening on an audio podcast, do you want to tell people what they would how they would plug into your shows?
If they just go to YouTube, and all you have to do is type in Paranormal Highway, you're going to find me.
Okay.
It's at Paranormal Highway on YouTube, and of course, in every show, in the description, it has links to my Instagrams, the TikToks, all that kind of stuff. So just go to YouTube, type in Paranormal Highway. I'm like one of the first ones up there, and you can't miss it. You can't miss a guy with a cowboy hat.
Yeah. Yeah. And Preston, do you want to talk about a couple of your latest books? Don't forget to talk about The Light Gate, so people can check out your show that you co-host with Dolly Saffron.
I want to check out that book.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. This was fun. Do a lot of podcasts, and I have to say I had a lot of fun today doing this one. Loved what was being said. I do have a bunch of books out there, which you can find on Amazon. Here's my latest book, Humanoids and High Strangeness. And this is the one I would recommend to anyone who's really interested in the phenomena. Symmetry. This is the true story of Dolly Saffron and her fully conscious experiences. She's my co-host on The Light Gate, which airs every Monday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 9 to 11 on the United Public Radio Network, and on YouTube and Facebook and other Roku, other platforms. And I do have a YouTube channel where I put up my research for those who don't have the time or inclination to read books. So I'm putting out a lot of my investigations there. And
That's awesome.
just having a lot of fun with this, because if you're not having fun, what are you doing here?
Exactly.
It is a subject I take seriously, I will say that, but
Mhm.
it's important to have fun. That's how I always close out my YouTube shows. And yeah, I'm easy to find. I have a website as well. You can contact me, just type in my name. You can find me on most of the social media platforms. And yeah, thanks again for having me on the show. And yeah, check out me and Dolly on the Light Gate. We're having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and you've got some great guests. All of you have great guests as well. Now, before we close out, any last thoughts or things you want to express, or questions you want to ask, or anything that you didn't get a chance to say yet?
Go real quick. Don't look to the lying governments for answers. You're not going to get them. Allow love and truth to guide your actions. And that would be it. Don't live in fear. Leave fear behind. We're living in a safe universe. We're immortal beings. And yeah, have fun.
I agree with them. Don't listen to government. Go with your heart. Your heart's not going to lie to you. Go with that. You'll find the truth. There is lies out there, but you will find the truth. You just got to go with your gut. Go with your heart. That's where your answers are.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with there's plenty of proof out there that has come out that there is a number of people who have seen the technology, these I've got to be careful how I say this, but these bouncing boxes that Greer talks about, regardless of your opinion of Greer, many others talk about, there is the very real possibility of technology that if you had one of these in your house, you wouldn't have to pay any kind of utility bill again. But just imagine the pensions and then Wall Street and the all of the corrupt billionaires who would hiccup, at their tea parties. And this is unfortunately they're the ones that made the game, and we are here, and unfortunately we have to play by their rules.
Yep. Well, I guess that's about it for today. I want to thank you very much, Ryan and Eric and Preston, for joining us on this panel. I've really enjoyed the discussion. And I want to thank all the listeners and the viewers, because without you, I wouldn't even have the show. And I appreciate you all so very, very much. I want to thank everybody for joining us today on the Quantum Guide Show. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye for today. Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.